Okay, we're going to have a look at repairing a hole or a tear in a trilaminate dry suit, which is quite a common practice where you've caught it on a hook or a nail or you've sat on something sharp and it ends up being a hole or a tear in your dry suit. Repairing of a dry suit, 99% of it is preparation, is to make sure that everything is clean and debris free. So you make sure and identify the hole and the area you're going to actually do the work on. And the most similar thing you can actually relate it to is if you're a child or a younger kid in the day, it's like repairing an inner tube of a bicycle tire or even a car tire. So the most important thing is to identify the area. Here we have a slit in this one. So first thing we've got to do is take an alcohol-based cleaner that's going to etch out any salt, bacteria, or any muck in the nylon. So we etch that out and we rub around and clean it up. If it was a rubber tire, you'd be using sandpaper to rough it up. But in this case, we're going to be using a chemical cleaner called 161. That's etching out all the salt, the dirt, and the bacteria. We then leave that to dry and for all the alcohol to evaporate out of the nylon so there's no chemical effect to the glue, and that's going to take a couple of minutes. Okay, so now we've actually cleaned the material and allowed it to evaporate and we've got a clean base to work from. As I said, 99% of this repair is in the preparation, so make sure the area is dead clean. So what we've got to do now is put a first coat of glue on very liberally, and we've got to allow that to seep down through the nylon. And if you remember, we've got to get to this butyl. This is where all the effect is going to take place. This is where the actual hole is in the butyl. So we've got to get through the nylon into this butyl. So by layering up the first coat of glue, by marking out the area that we're actually going to glue, saves a lot of glue being wasted and also embarrassment where the glue is going to look horrible when you've done the repair. So stay within that line, liberally coat it so you've got plenty of glue on there. Be quite generous with it. But you must bear in mind you've got to allow this glue to seep through the nylon into the actual butyl itself. Keep it as even as possible. Now at this point we allow that to stay and let it dry and seep through into the actual butyl. We're building up layer after layer of glue to build it up to the surface of the nylon. So give that a couple of minutes before it's actually touch dry. Okay, so as you can see now, we've actually put the first coat on and it's now touch dry. It's actually absorbed down into the nylon and it's now adhering itself to the butyl layer, this here. We're hoping it's got that far down. And because it's dry, it's telling me that it's gone down. I can now apply the second coat. By applying the second coat, this now will allow us to build that layer of material from the butyl up to the surface of the actual nylon itself. So by allowing that coat to go on, we've built a second layer and gone past the nylon or within line of the nylon itself. And that should fairly well sit on top of the surface of that nylon and take a little bit longer to dry. But at this point, we then use a neoprene patch. As you can see, it's shiny one side and it's opaque or natural on the other side. We give that its first coat as well. And once again, we allow that to dry equally. So I'm going to have 3 coats on here and 2 coats on here. Every coat allowed to tactile dry between each coat. So we'll give that a few more minutes to dry, and then we can apply the third coat to this one, and then the second coat to the actual patch itself. Okay, so now we've got the second coat on, and as you can see, it's dry. I can touch it on both sides. It's ample and it's good. So we know that coat's gone into the first coat and adhered to it, and now we can apply the third coat. Now the third coat on this is going to take that layering of glue above the nylon, so it gives this patch something to work on. So let's put the third layer of glue on that second one, and this is the one that's going to be the final coat that we're actually going to work on. Make sure we get to the edges. And then if you can, spread it as evenly as possible. And again, we're going to allow this coat to become semi-tactile, and then we're going to put the second final coat on the patch. If you're a bit allergic to fumes, I suggest wearing a mask. Or if you like to get a little bit happy doing it, stick as I am and absorb it in. So what we're going to do now is allow that to become tactile enough where it's just sticky, but not totally dry. So you have to keep an eye on this. It's going to take about 2 or 3 minutes. It's a little bit longer because we're already drying on a second coat of glue. So give this a couple of minutes and we'll come back and see. As you can see at the moment, it's too wet. So we've got to let that get tactile dry. Okay, so now we got to the point where we can actually put our fingers on this and the glue's not sticking to our fingers, but it is dry. Now, I started off the actual presentation saying it's a two-part glue. What we've done for this demonstration, two-part is the body of the glue. The second part is the actual hardener that you put in the glue to make the acceleration of the curing time. Less hardener, the longer the drying time. The more hardener, the quicker the drying time. But it's a very unique way of messing around with it. So because we do this daily, we're fairly well up. But if you go to any store and ask for a Bostik two-part epoxy or two-part glue, then they'll supply you a Bostik 5174, which is the main body of the glue and a hardener to go in it. So as you can see, it's dry, but it's still tactile. So we line the patch up to where we want it to go, and it's at the point now where I can actually line it and see I've gone wrong. I can now take it back off and line it again. So we're not at the point where we can't do some work with it in order to line it up with the area I want to do the repair on. Once I've done that, I then can get a paper roller or an edge of a bottle and roller it down and make sure all the bubbles and all the edges are tight down. As you can see, that patch is now taking care of the repair. You can stretch it and you can just see it. So leave that now for a good 4 hours to set officially, but to be 100% safe, give it a good 24 hours. You can allow the glue to dry, but with the alcohol cleaner that you bought to clean the suit with, you can go around the outer edge and take off any excess glue just to tidy it up. Again, don't go too excessive with this because that will absorb in to the edge of the patch and start to lift it. So go very, very careful. Not too much. As you can see, it's now cleaned up. The reason we use a neoprene smooth rubber is because the chafing that goes on during a dive under the water, that will allow it to chafer. Whereas if you used nylon to nylon, it would end up curling the edges. And that's a simple repair to a trilaminate dry suit.